Well, let's return to our top story now, that NATO summit in Brussels, where Donald Trump has urged European allies to spend more on defence and to increase the target to 4%, up from the current target of 2% of national income. Let's get the thoughts of Daniel Davis, who's a retired Lieutenant Colonel, Defence Fellow and military expert at the Washington think tank Defence Priorities. Good to have you with us on BBC News. This isn't the first time a US president has called on other NATO members, in particular in Europe, to take more responsibility for their own defence. But perhaps none have put it quite so bluntly, have they?
No, I think that's exactly right. It's virtually every president, although we going all the way back to Reagan especially, has been saying the same thing every year. And unfortunately, it hasn't seemed to result in actual production in terms of what they actually pay. But President Trump has certainly turned a new page on how to approach the issue. That's to be sure.
I mean, given the potential tensions it causes among allies, if it's not a realistic target, is there any point in really calling for it at all?
Well, I think what he's trying to do is honestly, I think he's just trying to make a point that, he expects the number to come up. And I think he's using some of the tactics maybe he used in some of his financial negotiations as Mr. Trump before he became president, where, you ask for a lot more than you expect to get and then you come back down. So in all probability, he's actually thinking he wants to accomplish the 2% number. But by throwing out this 4% number, which, as I'm sure you know, we're not even meeting at the moment at 3.57%. But I think he does. And there is some justification that, members of NATO, they have agreed to this at the Wales Summit in 2014. And if they say that 2% is the number that they have agreed to, then I think it's reasonable to say, when is that going to start materializing? And, now it's out to 2024. And the problem is I'm not sure that, it's going to happen even then. So I think it's something that really deserves some attention. I just wish that he would be doing it a lot differently and a lot more friendly towards our allies than he has been.
It's quite an unusual approach, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to sort of say other NATO members in general or as a whole, but he went further. He singled out Germany in particular. What's his gripe with Germany?
Well, I think, as with a number of points in this whole situation, some of the points are valid, and he has a legitimate point here. But the way he's going about it is really bad. For example, Germany was spending 1.4% of GDP on defense in 2001. And now that in 2018, it's 1.2 something percent. And so it's actually going in the wrong direction. And I think it's valid to say, hey, if the economic powerhouse of Europe is not even making progress towards the 2%, then something needs to change. But that's something that needs to be handled diplomatically, behind closed doors, not in front of everybody, not calling out the, Angela Merkel. I just don't think that's the right way to do it. I don't think it's going to be helpful. But there is some substance underneath that.
Do you think it could do any damage to relations between the US and its European allies in NATO?
I think that, though, that NATO is bigger than any one person, and for the the difficulty that Trump has, and for the way he's challenged and how he presents himself in our situation and our needs, I think that the NATO is bigger than just the United States. And the United States is more than just the president, because we also have the Congress, and we also have the military capabilities that we have. And you've seen some continued cooperation at very high levels with the United States military and our NATO allies, and that's going to continue on. So I think that it's bigger than just Trump, and I don't think that's going to cause any permanent damage, at least not up to this point.
OK, Daniel Davis, retired Lieutenant Colonel from Defence Priorities there in Washington. Thanks very much indeed.